Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Beyond the Gates channel. Hope you're having a wonderful day. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe and hit like for more daily drama updates and spoilers. Your support truly means a lot and helps our channel grow every day. Beyond the Gates has placed Heather Armstrong right in the middle of the DMV with a dangerous agenda. And Joey Armstrong is making it painfully clear that he wants no part of it. Heather came into town expecting to get what she wanted, but Joey has refused to let her into his business. And the harder he pushes her away, the more dangerous her reaction could become. If Heather cannot get her way, she may decide that the one weapon powerful enough to hurt her brother is the darkest secret he has ever carried. She could expose Joey's role in Doug McBride's death and tell Vanessa McBride that the man she loves, trusts, and sleeps beside is actually the person responsible for murdering her first husband. For months, viewers have been left wondering whether the terrible truth surrounding Doug's murder will finally come into the light, and now Heather may be the person standing closest to that revelation. Long before Vanessa and Joey became the complicated couple they are today, Vanessa's life revolved around Doug McBride, the man she met when they were both very young. They eventually married and had twins, and for a time, they looked like one of the DMV's most powerful couples, even though their marriage was far from perfect. Doug was a brilliant cardiac surgeon with an impressive career. But behind that respected professional image was a devastating gambling addiction that steadily consumed his time, his money, and eventually his entire life. Vanessa and Doug had an open marriage, but their arrangement was very different from what most people might imagine, because Vanessa was the one who pursued physical relationships outside the marriage, while Doug remained consumed by gambling. Vanessa's relationships were largely physical rather than emotional, and Doug accepted them because he knew that despite everything, Vanessa still loved him and remained committed to their marriage. Vanessa's own life became complicated in other ways as well, with her physical encounters extending to escorts and even her personal trainer at Fairmont Crest Country Club. Yet Doug tolerated those arrangements because he understood the boundaries Vanessa had placed around them, and for a while, their unusual marriage continued to function despite its cracks. The real disaster began when Doug's gambling addiction brought him directly into Joey Armstrong's orbit. Joey saw an opportunity almost immediately because Doug's growing gambling debt could become the perfect leverage against Vanessa and her successful real estate company. What began as a business calculation would eventually become something far more personal. But at first, Joey was simply looking at Vanessa as an asset he could control. That was why Joey allowed Doug to sink deeper and deeper into debt instead of cutting him off, repeatedly extending his credit while making sure the pressure never disappeared. Doug kept gambling, believing he could somehow win his way back out, while Joey quietly tightened the trap around him. Making the situation even more sinister was Doug's childhood friend, Randy Parker, who worked for Joey and was ordered to help lure Doug further into the gambling world. Randy did not want to betray someone he had known for most of his life, but he had little choice if he wanted to survive Joey's world. Every new debt brought Doug closer to disaster, and eventually Vanessa discovered just how deeply her husband had fallen into debt with the local mob boss, leaving her horrified and desperate for a way to protect him. Vanessa was given an impossible choice, because Joey made it clear that if she refused his demands, Doug could pay a devastating price. His career, his hands as a surgeon, his legs, or even his life could be destroyed if the debt remained unpaid. And Vanessa knew that Joey was dangerous enough to make those threats real. With no safe alternative, she reluctantly allowed Joey to use her real estate business to launder money, even though every instinct told her that she was stepping into something she might never escape. But once Joey gained access to Vanessa herself and to the business he had wanted to control, something unexpected began happening inside him. The woman who had originally been nothing more than a useful business connection started becoming an obsession. And what began as simple lust slowly developed into something far more consuming. Joey pursued Vanessa relentlessly, even though she had no interest in giving him what he wanted at first. His persistence eventually wore down her resistance, and before long, Joey became one of Vanessa's lovers, transforming their criminal arrangement into a dangerous personal relationship. But Joey was not content to share Vanessa, and he gradually made sure that the other men in her life disappeared from the picture. Vanessa remained married to Doug, still wearing her wedding ring, but Joey hated the reminder that another man held a place in her heart and that she was still technically his wife. Over time, his feelings became deeper and more possessive, while Vanessa herself began discovering that there was a strange thrill in operating on the wrong side of the law. The danger, the secrecy, and the power began pulling her in, and being with Joey offered her an entirely different kind of excitement. Yet no matter how complicated her relationship with Joey became, Vanessa still loved Doug, and Doug could see exactly what was happening between them. His jealousy turned into fury, and his anger eventually became an obsession of its own as he decided that Joey had to be stopped. Doug began meeting with Jacob Hawthorne, attempting to gather enough information to implicate Joey in his crimes, and he also discussed the situation with Bill Hamilton. Unfortunately for Doug, Bill betrayed him by tipping Joey off, and the moment Joey learned that Doug was actively working against him, the stakes changed completely. Doug was no longer merely a man trapped in gambling debt. He had become a serious threat who could potentially destroy Joey's entire operation. Vanessa tried desperately to convince Doug to stop, but it was as if his gambling addiction had simply been replaced by a new obsession: the determination to destroy Joey and rescue Vanessa from him. The tragedy was that Vanessa was already deeply attracted to Joey, even while remaining committed to her marriage, and Doug could not accept the fact that he was losing her. Joey eventually reached the conclusion that Doug was simply too dangerous to leave alive, and that was when he began planning the murder that would change Vanessa's life forever. Joey took Vanessa to Puerto Rico, deliberately creating distance between himself and the coming crime, while also giving himself the perfect alibi. Back home, he arranged for his casino dealer to allow Doug to win big, knowing that the sudden success would keep Doug gambling and make him easier to manipulate. At the same time, Marcel Malone kept Doug drinking, slipping something into his system before taking the final steps of Joey's plan. Doug was robbed of his money because Joey knew he would have no use for it where he was going, and then Marcel placed him behind the wheel. The scene was carefully arranged to look like nothing more than a drunk driving accident, turning Joey's calculated murder into what appeared to be a tragic accident. The plan worked exactly as intended, and Doug perished in a fiery crash while Vanessa was thousands of miles away in Puerto Rico. When the devastating phone call arrived and Vanessa learned that her husband was dead, her world shattered in an instant. She mourned Doug with genuine grief, completely unaware that the man standing beside her and comforting her was the very person who had arranged his death. Even Vanessa's children began asking questions that Joey had to carefully navigate. Donnell wanted to know why Joey had allowed Doug to continue gambling so heavily, while Deanna carried her own suspicions about the circumstances surrounding her father's death. But neither twin came anywhere close to discovering the horrifying truth that Joey had murdered their father. Joey played the role of the grieving partner perfectly, encouraging Vanessa to mourn and giving her the emotional support she needed while hiding the blood on his hands. He even donated a large sum of money to the clinic Leslie started, making sure there was a plaque and dedication honoring Doug. An almost chilling gesture, considering that Joey was responsible for putting Doug there. For now, the perfect murder remains hidden, and Vanessa continues to love the man who secretly destroyed her first marriage and murdered her husband. But while Joey appears to have escaped the consequences of Doug's murder, his past is not the only danger closing in around him. His biggest present-day problem may be his own sister, Heather Armstrong, who has arrived in the DMV with an agenda and absolutely no intention of backing down. Heather wants access to Joey's business, but Joey has already told her no, and he appears determined to stand by that decision. Worse still, he has had Randy and his other henchmen watching Heather, making it clear that he does not trust her intentions. Heather is dangerous enough on her own, but her obsession with Andre Richardson creates an even bigger problem, because she has been stalking him and appears determined to have him back in her life. Once Joey realizes just how obsessed Heather has become with Andre, the pieces may begin falling into place. Her fixation on Andre helps explain why she has been so intensely focused on Vanessa, and through Vanessa, on Danny Dupree as well. Joey is likely to figure out what Heather is doing sooner rather than later, and once he understands the full scope of her plans, he may approach Andre himself looking for information. Joey could even offer Andre protection, because keeping the Duprees on his side is important to him, and Heather is rapidly becoming a threat to those relationships. In Joey's mind, the solution may be brutally simple. Heather will never be with Andre, she will never be allowed into his business, and she should take herself back to London. But telling Heather to walk away may be the exact thing that pushes her over the edge. If Joey blocks her from Andre and refuses to give her the business access she wants, Heather could decide that she has nothing left to lose. She knows Vanessa is Joey's greatest weakness, and she also knows that hurting Vanessa directly would probably result in Joey killing her. But Heather may realize that she does not need to physically hurt Vanessa to destroy Joey. She only needs to take away the one thing he values most by exposing the truth about Doug. If Heather becomes determined enough, she could begin spreading money around, buying information and access to Joey's deepest secrets, until she finally uncovers the story everyone thought would remain buried forever. And one of the most obvious people who could hold that secret is Randy Parker. Randy was there when Doug's downfall was being engineered. And despite his involvement, he has never truly gotten over the fact that Doug died. They were lifelong friends, and Randy was forced to participate in a scheme that ultimately ended with Doug's death. Heather could exploit that guilt, manipulate Randy, or simply pay enough money to make him talk. If she learns that Joey ordered Doug's murder, she would immediately understand just how devastating that information could be. She knows Vanessa loves Joey, and she knows exactly how fiercely protective Joey is of the woman he stole from Doug. Heather would have several ways to use the truth once she had it. She could secretly give the information to the police and hope Joey never discovers that she was the person who exposed him, potentially removing him from power and leaving his business open for her to take over. She could instead go directly to Vanessa, revealing the truth simply to destroy Joey's relationship because he ruined Heather's plans to reclaim Andre. Or, perhaps most dangerously, Heather could turn the secret into blackmail, telling Joey that he must let her into his business or allow her to restart the Red Market ring, or she will tell Vanessa that he murdered Doug. Joey and Heather would both understand exactly what such a revelation would mean. If Vanessa learned that Joey had orchestrated Doug's death, the love story they built after his funeral would collapse in an instant. Because Vanessa would realize that the man she trusted during the darkest moment of her life was the architect of her husband's murder. Joey would lose Vanessa, and for a man who has become this emotionally attached to her, that loss could be more frightening than prison or death itself. That is why Heather may be putting herself in greater danger than she realizes, because Joey may ultimately decide that protecting his relationship with Vanessa matters more than protecting his own sister. If Heather pushes him far enough, she could force Joey into making an irreversible choice. And that possibility makes the future of Beyond the Gates even more dangerous. Because Heather is not simply threatening Joey's business anymore, she is threatening the one relationship that has become his greatest weakness. Heather is a violent and deeply unstable woman, and if she tries to use Doug's murder as leverage, Joey may decide that there is only one way to silence her permanently. The cruel irony is that Heather could believe she is holding the perfect weapon against her brother, only to discover that the secret itself has placed a target on her back. After everything Joey has already done to protect his empire and keep Vanessa beside him, there may be very little he would not do to keep her from learning the truth. For that reason, the hope that Joey's secret will eventually come out remains stronger than ever. It is almost unbearable to watch Vanessa remain deeply in love with and intimate with the man who murdered her first husband, especially when she still believes Joey was the person who helped her survive the aftermath of Doug's death. But Heather could complicate the entire revelation by choosing blackmail instead of simply telling Vanessa the truth. She may hold the secret over Joey's head, demanding power, access, or control until the situation becomes impossible to contain. And if she pushes Joey too far, Heather could find herself facing the same terrifying fate that once consumed Doug McBride. A sudden, fiery, fatal accident that looks innocent from the outside, but hides a much darker truth underneath. But the danger does not end with Heather simply discovering the truth. The real question is what happens when she realizes just how much power that truth gives her over Joey. For years, Joey has built his life around control, carefully manipulating people, eliminating threats, and making sure every problem disappears before it can reach Vanessa. Doug's death was supposed to be the ultimate example of that control, a perfectly staged tragedy that left Vanessa grieving while Joey quietly stepped into the place beside her. Yet, Heather is different from the people Joey has manipulated before, because she knows how ruthless he can be and is ruthless enough herself to challenge him. If she discovers that Doug's fiery death was not an accident at all, she could suddenly become the one person Joey cannot intimidate into silence. And that is where Randy Parker could become the key to everything. Randy has spent years carrying the weight of what happened to Doug, knowing that his childhood friend was deliberately pushed toward the circumstances that ultimately killed him. He may not have personally carried out the murder, but he knows enough about Joey's operation to understand that Doug's death was never random. Heather could exploit that guilt, pushing Randy until his loyalty to Joey finally breaks under the pressure of his memories. Even if Randy initially refuses to speak, Heather could keep digging, following every connection until she finds someone willing to confirm what really happened. Once she has enough information, she would no longer be merely Joey's troublesome sister. She would become a walking threat to everything he has built. Meanwhile, Vanessa could remain completely unaware of the storm gathering around her. She continues to see Joey as the man who stood beside her when Doug died, the man who helped her survive the grief, and eventually gave her a new reason to believe in love. That makes the potential revelation even more devastating, because Vanessa would not simply be learning that Joey committed a crime, she would be forced to reconsider every comforting memory she has built around him. Every moment when Joey held her while she cried, every gesture he made in Doug's memory, and even the money he donated to Leslie's clinic could suddenly look horrifyingly different. The man she believed helped her through her darkest hour would be revealed as the person who created that darkness in the first place. And Heather knows exactly where that emotional wound would strike. She would not need to convince Vanessa that Joey is dangerous if she could simply show her the evidence and let the truth destroy the relationship on its own. But Heather may not be thinking that far ahead because her obsession with Andre has already clouded her judgment. Her desire to regain control over her life and reclaim Andre could become more important to her than exposing Joey for justice. That is what makes her unpredictable. Because instead of immediately taking the truth to the authorities, or Vanessa, she may see it as the ultimate bargaining chip. The longer she keeps Joey's secret, the more she can demand from him. Joey could find himself trapped in an impossible situation where every option carries consequences. If he gives Heather what she wants, he risks allowing an unstable and violent woman deeper into his criminal operation. If he refuses, she could destroy his relationship with Vanessa by revealing the truth about Doug. If he tries to silence her, Heather may already have made arrangements to release the information if anything happens to her. For perhaps the first time, Joey could realize that brute force and intimidation are not enough to solve the problem. Heather is not simply an enemy he can scare away, she is family. She knows him intimately and she knows exactly which wound to press. At the same time, Heather's fixation on Andre could bring another layer of danger into the situation. Joey may approach Andre under the guise of offering protection, hoping to understand what Heather has been doing and why she is so obsessed with him. Andre could find himself caught between wanting to protect himself and the people around him, while also recognizing that accepting Joey's protection could come with a dangerous price. If Joey begins asking questions about Heather, Andre may realize that the Armstrong family conflict is far more serious than he first believed. And if Heather discovers that Joey has gone directly to Andre, her anger could become even more explosive. That could push Heather toward Vanessa sooner than anyone expects. She may begin watching Vanessa, studying her relationship with Joey, searching for the perfect moment to strike. Perhaps she would not reveal everything immediately, because Heather may want Vanessa emotionally prepared to believe the worst before she delivers the final blow. She could plant doubts, make mysterious accusations, or hint that Joey has been hiding something terrible from her. Vanessa might initially dismiss those warnings because she loves Joey and trusts him, but once the first cracks appear, the memories of Doug's death could begin returning in ways she cannot ignore. The most haunting possibility is that Vanessa could eventually start questioning the details that never quite made sense. Why had Doug suddenly won so much money before his death? Why was he drinking so heavily? Why was he driving in that condition? Why did Joey happen to be in Puerto Rico with her when the accident occurred? Why did Joey seem so prepared to comfort her and guide her through the aftermath? Individually, each detail could be explained away as coincidence, but together they could form a picture Vanessa has never allowed herself to see. Once suspicion takes root, even the smallest inconsistency could become impossible to ignore. And if Vanessa ever confronts Joey with those questions, everything could change in a heartbeat. Joey would have to decide whether to continue lying, attempt to manipulate Vanessa into doubting herself, or finally confess the truth about Doug. Given everything viewers know about him, confession would probably be the last option he considers. He has survived by controlling the story around him, and he would likely do everything possible to keep Vanessa from learning that he orchestrated the murder. But Vanessa knows Doug better than Joey realizes, and after years of loving him, she may recognize details about his final days that Joey cannot explain. That is why Heather's greatest weapon may not actually be the secret itself, but the emotional devastation it could unleash once Vanessa begins connecting the dots. Joey has always believed that he could protect Vanessa by controlling the people around her, but he cannot control what she remembers or how she feels once the truth reaches her. And if Vanessa discovers that Joey deliberately removed Doug from her life, she may begin questioning whether their entire relationship was built on manipulation. She could wonder whether Joey ever truly loved her, or whether his love was born from the same possessiveness that drove him to eliminate her husband. For Heather, however, the temptation to use that secret as blackmail could prove fatal. The moment she tells Joey that she knows about Doug, she becomes the most dangerous person in his world. She could demand entry into his business, insist on controlling part of his operation, or threaten to resurrect the red market ring if he refuses. She might even believe that she has finally found the one thing her powerful brother cannot defeat. But Heather may underestimate how far Joey is willing to go when Vanessa's love is at stake. Because Joey can replace money, power, influence, and even criminal associates, but Vanessa is much harder to replace. She represents the one part of his life that he appears to genuinely value beyond his empire. That makes Heather's threat deeply personal, and personal threats are often the ones that create the most dangerous reactions. If Joey decides Heather will never stop unless she is permanently removed, the line between brother and enemy could disappear completely. And once that happens, Heather may discover that knowing Joey's darkest secret does not necessarily protect her from him. The tragedy would be almost unbearable if Heather's blackmail eventually led her toward the same fate as Doug. She could believe she is using Joey, demanding more and more from him because she thinks the secret makes her untouchable. But with every demand, she could push him closer to the point of no return. One final threat against Vanessa could be enough to convince Joey that he has no choice, leaving Heather facing the possibility that the very secret she uncovered becomes the reason she disappears. Meanwhile, Vanessa could remain at the center of this deadly game without understanding that her own love story has become the battlefield. On one side stands Joey, desperately trying to preserve the relationship he built after Doug's death. On the other stands Heather, armed with a secret capable of destroying everything her brother has protected. And somewhere in the shadows is Randy, carrying the guilt of knowing how Doug's final days were manipulated. The closer these pieces move toward one another, the harder it becomes to believe that Joey can keep the truth buried forever.